Well, hello everyone. I reassembled the differential with the axles after cleaning them all up, and I'm checking the wear between the spider gears and the axle gears using my gauge here, and just set it to 0, and then I just move it a little bit. Oops, too much. Like right there, and it's 5 thousandths, and the limit is 10, so we're good there. Okay, now I have my dial indicator set up to measure my end play, and it's virtually nothing. Doesn't move at all, so that's good. I can have up to 15 thousandths, but I'm pretty much at 0. Well, hello everyone. I'm putting the rear end back together here, and got it all cleaned up. I've got the grease seals that are in this area here removed, and before I put in the new ones, I had to cut off the old spring hangers that made this axle spring in the rear. So, and since mine's going to be spring over, I cut that off. Then I took the Model A spring over mount and welded that on here. So now that all the welding and the heating's done, I can go ahead and install the new grease seal. And to do that, they make a tool. It's just a little seal driver. That's all it is. Then you get a piece of 1/2-inch threaded pipe, and put the seal driver on there. Grease your seal up. And there's the seal, there's one side that goes in and one side that goes out. So you have to make sure you get that right. And I have a piece of wood here on the floor so I don't mess up the end of the bell. And with the seal on there, a little bit of grease around the end of it. Fit that down in there. Tap it, listen for the tone difference. Once the tone becomes more like a ringing tone, then you know it's all the way in. You can go ahead and look in there, feel in there, and make sure it's all the way in, which that one is. Okay, and during the rebuild, there's some mesh measurings we have to take, backlash and the such, and I could not figure out a way to measure. You're supposed to have inch-pounds of torque, how much inch-pounds of torque it takes to turn this pinion. I couldn't figure out how to attach it. None of my sockets fit or anything, so I slept on it overnight. My Model A came with a transmission that I'm not going to use, and it had a U-joint on there, and I thought, well, maybe that U-joint fits this pinion. So I went ahead and I checked it, and indeed it does fit it. So I cut the end of the U-joint off and welded it to a socket, and then that will fit on there, and then I'll be able to take that inch-pound torque wrench and see how many inch-pounds it takes to turn the pinion. So that was another tool, and I looked around the internet and couldn't find what people used, so I just kind of thought that one up, and I think it's going to work good. All right, talk to you soon. Well, according to the instructions I'm using, which is the instructions out of the old Ford Green Bible, you're supposed to put an 8 to 10 thousandths gasket on the banjo, then install the right axle housing, install the differential, then put another gasket on the left-hand side of the banjo, 8 to 10 thousandths gasket on the banjo, and then install the left banjo. So that's what I'll be doing now. Okay, I have it assembled with the two. It says in the book to start with 8 to 10 thousandths. My kit came with 9 thousandths inch gaskets, so I put a 9 thousandths on this side, 9 thousandths on the left side. Put it back together, and then you're supposed to take by hand each axle and be able to turn them in the same direction at about the same speed, and it should be a perceptible drag. Well, I had my wife come out and we turned it, and to me it kind of felt a little easy. So according to the book, if it's too easy, you remove the shims on the right hand axles. So I have a 9 in there right now. Maybe I'll go to a 5, or depending on what my kit has here. But so that's what I'm going to do now. Remove this, try a different smaller shim, and put it back together, and then test the drag again. Okay, so I removed the 9 and I added a 7 on the right. Removed the 9 and replaced it with a 7 thousandths gasket on the right hand axle, and now I have a good heavy drag when we try to turn both the axles in the same direction. And I was trying to think, okay, what actually am I doing here? And what I come up with is what I think is what we're doing is, okay, the bearing races are in the axle housings, right, the bells, but the bearings are on the carrier, okay, the differential carrier. So what we're doing is, by reducing shims, we're squeezing those bearing races onto the bearings farther and farther and farther, which makes the axles harder to turn, that differential. So looser would be looser, harder. So we're establishing how hard those bearings on each, the carrier bearings, are pressed into the races. So now we have that established. Now we need to take and adjust the shims to where the whole differential carrier housing is moving left or right, away from where the ring gear is moving away from the pinion or into the pinion. So we have the width established. Now we're just getting the side to side of the whole diff to the pinion gear. I'm no professional, but that's what I'm envisioning in my head happening here. So next, we have to check the preload on the pinion gear and the end plate. Alright, now it's time to measure the pinion to ring gear backlash. I have my dial indicator set up here to where it's set up to where the splines of the pinion gear will push the dial indicator. Now it'll indicate the backlash, or the mesh between the pinion and the ring gear. So here we go. When I turn it, you'll hear it click. You'll hear the pinion click against the ring gear, and that'll show us the backlash. Okay, and it's about 5 thousandths. The limit was 3 to 8 thousandths, so I'm well within limits there. One thing to note, when I took this differential apart, I just wanted to check the condition of it. It was in really good shape. I didn't see any need to replace any bearing races or any bearings. And I also didn't see a need to pull this pinion assembly out. So I didn't have to do any adjusting on the pinion. It turns freely after cleaning it and everything. It turns freely, and there's no end play to it, so I'm going to leave that as it is. I know there's supposed to be some drag turning that pinion, but so I'm not going to mess with that. And now that I know that end play, or the clearance between the pinion and the ring gear is correct, the only thing left to do with the differential is to go ahead and pull it apart and add some this Permatex Indian head gasket shellac compound. People use that. They say it seals it up, but it doesn't change the thickness of the gaskets. So I'm going to go ahead and tear this back apart, add that to it, put it back together, and that should be the end of building the rear end here. So thanks for watching.